Stay right where you are. Don't you dare move. I remember the exact moment my whole world cracked open. Not slowly, not with warning, but all at once, like glass hitting concrete. My hands were shaking, my eyes couldn't believe what they were seeing, and the woman I was about to give everything to was standing there holding an empty bucket, while my 79-year-old mother sat on the ground completely soaked in dirty, muddy water. I never thought I would be telling this story out loud. But here I am, because some lessons only make sense once the pain is done. My name is Marcus Cole, and I am what the world calls a trillionaire. But let me tell you something. All the money in the world means absolutely nothing when the people you trust the most are using you for a fool. By the time I was 41 years old, I had built an empire that stretched across 4 continents. Energy companies, private shipping, real estate, tech infrastructure. Forbes had stopped trying to calculate my worth because the numbers kept moving. My company, Cole Global Holdings, employed over 80,000 people worldwide. People called me the quiet giant. I never chased attention. I never needed the spotlight. I wore the same plain watch my late father gave me when I turned 30. I drove a regular car unless I was traveling for business. I didn't need to show anyone what I had. What I had was mine, and I knew exactly what it cost me to build it. But power and money have a way of attracting the wrong kind of company, and I had already learned that lesson once, the hard way, when I lost the one person who ever truly knew me. Her name was Diana Cole. She was my wife, my best friend, and the most brilliant person I have ever met in my life. We grew up in the same rough part of Atlanta, 2 kids who didn't have much but had big dreams. Diana used to sit with me on the steps of our building and say, "Marcus, one day we are going to own buildings like these, not just live in them." And she meant it. She believed it before I did. We married young, 23 and 24. She finished her master's degree in finance while working full-time and raising our daughter, Naomi. I was building my first business from the ground floor, sometimes sleeping in the office, sometimes eating 1 meal a day. Diana never complained. She just kept pushing forward, kept believing that the sacrifice would be worth it. When I made my first 100 million, Diana cried. She said, "We made it, Marcus. We actually made it." She didn't say I, she said we. That's who she was. Naomi came into our world when Diana was 27. From the first day, that little girl owned both of our hearts completely. Diana was the kind of mother you read about in books, patient, creative, present. She read to Naomi every night. She built little science projects on the kitchen table. She made up songs to help her remember her school lessons. Our life was full. It was warm. It was real. Then Diana got sick. She started getting headaches in early spring. We thought it was stress. I was expanding the business, working brutal hours, and Diana was managing so much on her own. But the headaches didn't stop. They got worse. Then came the blurred vision, the memory lapses, the days she would wake up and simply not be able to get out of bed. The doctors said it was a brain tumor, stage 4, inoperable. I remember the moment the doctor said those words. I remember how the room felt like it was getting smaller, like the walls were pressing in. I remember looking at Diana sitting beside me, and instead of falling apart, she reached over and took my hand and said, "Okay, what do we do next?" That was Diana. Even facing the worst possible news, her first thought was what to do next. We fought that diagnosis with everything we had. I flew in specialists from every corner of the world. I paid for treatments that had never been tried before. I spent more money in 6 months than most families see in a lifetime. But cancer doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care how much money you have or how hard you love someone. Diana passed away on a Wednesday morning in September, with Naomi holding her right hand and me holding her left. She was 40 years old. Her last words to me were, "Take care of our girl, Marcus, and don't you dare stop living just because I'm gone." I held on to those words like a lifeline, but for a long time, I didn't know how to follow them. For 4 years after Diana died, I buried myself in work. I expanded the company, I acquired new businesses, I gave millions to charity. I did everything except feel the things I needed to feel. At home, my mother, Evelyn Cole, moved in to help me raise Naomi. Mama Evelyn, as everyone called her, was 74 at the time, retired from 30 years of teaching school. She was sharp, warm, and completely devoted to her granddaughter. She became the steady presence in our house that I couldn't always be. My younger sister, Darlene, also came around more often after Diana passed. Darlene had never married, she had no children of her own, and she poured all of her affection into Naomi. She would show up on weekends with craft supplies or new books or plans for road trips. Naomi adored her. For 4 years, the three of us, me, Mama Evelyn, and Darlene, built a life around Naomi that worked. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was perfect without Diana. But it was stable. It was safe. And I told myself that was enough. I told myself I didn't need anything more. I was lying to myself. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in October, 4 years and 2 months after Diana died. Naomi had come home from school complaining of sharp stomach pain. Mama Evelyn was at a doctor's appointment, and Darlene was stuck in traffic 2 hours away. I left a board meeting mid-sentence and drove to pick up my daughter myself. The family doctor confirmed it was a stomach bug going around Naomi's school. Nothing serious, but she'd need rest, fluids, and some medication. On the way home, I stopped at a small independent pharmacy in our neighborhood that Diana had always preferred over the chain stores. The pharmacist who helped us was not someone you forgot quickly. She was calm, focused. She spoke directly to Naomi instead of talking over her head to me, which Naomi immediately appreciated and noticed. She explained the medication clearly, made a small joke that made my daughter smile through her misery, and then, when we were about to leave, she said something that stopped me cold. "Sir, your daughter is lucky to have a father who leaves a meeting to come pick her up himself. That matters more than you know." I didn't know how to respond to that. I wasn't used to strangers saying things like that to me. I managed to say thank you and introduce myself. Her name was Celeste Harmon. She was a pharmacist with dreams of opening her own community health center. She was 36 years old. She grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Cincinnati, put herself through pharmacy school on scholarships and sheer determination, and moved to Atlanta 5 years earlier to build her own future. That was the whole conversation. 5 minutes, maybe less. But something stayed with me after we left. I told myself it was nothing, just a pleasant interaction with a professional person. I had no intention of pursuing anything romantic. I was still convinced that part of my life was finished. But 2 weeks later, I found myself at that same pharmacy, buying vitamins I didn't particularly need. Celeste was working. When she saw Naomi and me walk in, she smiled, not the polished practice smile of someone recognizing a wealthy customer, but a genuine, warm smile of someone glad to see a familiar face. "How is she feeling?" she asked, nodding toward Naomi. "Much better. Back to full energy and giving her grandmother a hard time." Celeste laughed, and I realized I had missed the sound of easy laughter in my house. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about nothing important: the neighborhood, her plans for the health center, Naomi's interest in science. When I left, Naomi said to me in the car, "She's really nice, Dad. She talks to me like a real person." That observation from my 12-year-old meant more to me than any business deal I had closed that year.
I started stopping by the pharmacy once or twice a week. Sometimes I had actual reasons. Sometimes I was honest enough to admit I just wanted to talk to someone who didn't look at me and see a business opportunity or a grieving widower or a powerful man to impress. With Celeste, I was just Marcus, and I hadn't been just Marcus in a very long time. 3 months after we first met, Celeste said something that changed our dynamic. We were sitting in the small break room of the pharmacy during her lunch hour. She had started saving her lunch break for when I came in, which we both pretended was a coincidence far longer than was believable. "Marcus," she said quietly, "can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead," I said. "Naomi has mentioned her grandmother a few times when she comes in with you, but she's never mentioned her mother. I don't want to overstep." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest that came every time someone approached that subject, but there was no judgment in Celeste's eyes, just honest, careful concern. Diana passed away 4 years ago, brain cancer. Celeste didn't fill the silence with hollow words. She didn't say, "Everything happens for a reason," or "She's in a better place now." She just said, "I'm so sorry, Marcus. That kind of loss doesn't have easy words." That response told me more about her character than anything else she could have said. Naomi doesn't talk about her much with people she doesn't know very well, but Diana she was everything. She was the center of our whole world. Losing her broke something in our house that we've never been able to fully fix. But you kept going. You kept going for Naomi. That takes more strength than most people can imagine. I looked at her for a long moment. I try. Most days I think I'm failing. From what I can see, Naomi is healthy, curious, kind, and knows her father loves her. That's not failure, Marcus. That's a job well done. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Not the bad kind of trouble, the kind that makes your heart start hoping for things it had stopped believing in. 2 months after that conversation, I asked Celeste to have dinner with Naomi and me at our house. Just dinner, nothing formal. Naomi had been asking if she could show Celeste her science project, a working model of a solar-powered water filter she had built for a school competition. Celeste arrived at our door with a single white orchid for the kitchen table and a book about women scientists for Naomi. She hadn't brought anything for me, which somehow made me like her even more. That evening was the first time in 4 years that our house felt genuinely alive again. Not just functional, alive. There was real laughter at the dinner table. Celeste asked Naomi questions about her project with genuine interest, not the polite, distracted interest of an adult pretending. When Naomi brought up Diana, talking about how her mother used to help her with science projects, Celeste listened with full attention and said, "She sounds like she was absolutely remarkable, and I can see her influence all over you." Naomi beamed. I watched from across the table and thought, this is what I have been missing. Not just a woman, this woman. This exact kind of warmth and grace, and real. After Naomi went to bed, Celeste and I talked until midnight. When she finally stood up to leave, she looked at me and said, "I'd like to do this again. Just us, next time, if that's okay with you." My heart did something it hadn't done in 4 years. I said yes.
Our first official date was a Friday evening at a quiet restaurant outside the city, somewhere I could be just a man on a date, not Marcus Cole, the Trillionaire. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since I was a teenager. My palms were actually damp. I had to remind myself to breathe normally when I saw her walk through the door. She wore a simple navy dress and small gold earrings. No over-the-top effort to impress, just herself. I said, "I need to tell you something before we order." She tilted her head. "Okay?" I haven't been on a first date since I was 22 years old. Diana and I started dating in college, and I never dated anyone else after she passed. So if I seem stiff or awkward tonight, that's the reason. Celeste smiled slowly. I appreciate you telling me that. Do you want to know something I haven't told you yet? Tell me. The reason I looked forward to your pharmacy visits, and yes, I knew they weren't always about vitamins, is because you never once tried to impress me with your money or your reputation. You just talked to me, like a person. Do you know how rare that is? I had no clever answer to that. I just said, I suppose I just knew you wouldn't be impressed by those things anyway. She laughed. Smart man. We talked for 3 hours about Diana, about Naomi, about her dreams for the health center, about the neighborhood she grew up in, and the grandmother who raised her, and the professor who told her she'd never make it through pharmacy school, and how she printed out that professor's email and framed it on her office wall the day she got her license. I drove home that night feeling something I had almost forgotten was real. Hope. Over the next 6 months, Celeste became a steady presence in our lives. She and Naomi developed their own friendship that didn't need me in the middle of it. They would text each other about science articles. They had a running competition over a word puzzle game on their phones. When Naomi won her school science competition, first place, a clean sweep, she called Celeste before she called me. Dad, is it okay that I told Celeste first? She asked me that evening, looking slightly guilty. Baby, that makes me happy, I said, and I meant it completely. Celeste honored Diana. That was the thing that moved me the deepest. She never shied away when Naomi brought her mother up. She never looked uncomfortable or changed the subject. She would ask questions, listen carefully, laugh at the stories. And once, when Naomi showed her a photo album of Diana, Celeste sat at the kitchen table and looked through every single page with the same care and respect she would have given her own family. She was so beautiful, Celeste said quietly. And look at that smile. Naomi, you have her exact smile. Did you know that? Naomi looked at the photo for a long time, then at Celeste. Nobody has ever pointed that out before, she said. Thank you. I had to leave the room for a moment after that. Not everyone in my family shared my happiness about Celeste. Mama Evelyn was polite, always polite, but there was a distance in her politeness that I recognized, the kind that means someone has already made their mind but is choosing their words carefully. She seems pleasant enough, Mama Evelyn said one evening when I asked directly what she thought. But, I said, Marcus, I've lived 79 years on this earth, and I've learned to watch people's eyes, not their smiles. I just want you to be careful. You are a man with more resources than most countries. People notice that. Mama, Celeste isn't like that. She's building her own business. She pays for her own things. She's never asked me for a single... I hear you, son. Just be careful. Darlene was less diplomatic. I don't trust her, Marcus, she told me flat out about 3 months into the relationship. We were sitting in my home office after dinner one evening. Something about her is too perfect. People who are that naturally good with children, that comfortable, that warm, it's almost always rehearsed. Or maybe it's because she's a good person, I said slowly. I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying you have been alone for 4 years, and you are vulnerable in ways you don't want to admit. I don't want someone to take advantage of that. I told both of them that they just needed time to adjust, that they would eventually see Celeste the way I saw her. I was patient, I was understanding. I was, as it turned out, not paying enough attention to what was actually happening. 8 months after our first dinner date, I proposed to Celeste in the exact spot where she had once told me she felt the most at peace in the world. There was a small river park about 20 minutes from the city. She had taken me there early in our relationship on a Sunday afternoon and said, "This is where I come when I need to think clearly. I've made every important decision in my life standing right here." I had the park staff set up a small clearing by the water, white lanterns, white roses,
Nothing over the top, just quiet and beautiful, in hers. When she arrived and saw it, she put both hands over her mouth and stood completely still for almost 30 seconds. I got down on one knee. Celeste, 4 years ago, I stopped believing that the best part of my life was still ahead of me. You didn't just change my mind, you proved it wrong. You love my daughter with your whole heart. You honor the memory of her mother. You have built your own life with your own hands and refused every shortcut I tried to offer you. You are the most genuinely good person I have found since I lost Diana, and I don't want to waste one more day not being your husband. Will you marry me? She was crying before I finished the sentence. She said yes. When we got home and told Naomi, my daughter screamed louder than the neighbors probably heard her through the walls. She threw herself at both of us and said, "I knew it! I called it! I told Grandma a month ago!" I laughed harder than I had in years. The call to Mama Evelyn and Darlene was different. "That's fast, Marcus," was the first thing Darlene said. 8 months is not fast. 8 months is how long it took me to be completely sure. Sure of what? That she loves you or that she loves what you can give her? I ended that call shortly after. Mama Evelyn just said, "I hope you know what you're doing, son." And then she said goodnight. I told myself they needed more time. I told myself they would come around. I should have paid closer attention.
2 weeks after the engagement, Celeste moved into our house. The first few weeks were good. She brought life into the rooms, she cooked Sunday dinners, she reorganized the kitchen in a way that made everything easier to find. She set up a little study corner for Naomi in the upstairs hallway with a reading light and a small bookshelf. But Mama Evelyn and Darlene had also started spending more time at the house. More than usual. More than felt natural. At first, I thought they were making an effort, trying to get to know Celeste, trying to welcome her. I was wrong. They were establishing territory. Mama Evelyn began taking tasks that Celeste had naturally started handling as the woman of the house: meal planning, grocery shopping, Naomi's schedule. When Celeste offered to help, Mama Evelyn would say with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Oh, darling, I've been doing this for years. I wouldn't want to burden you with it." Darlene would plan outings with Naomi, movies, shopping, weekend trips, specifically during times that she knew Celeste was going to be there, not to include Celeste, to exclude her. "They're doing it on purpose," Celeste told me one evening, her voice careful and quiet. "I don't want to cause problems, Marcus, but every time I try to be part of this household, I'm being pushed to the side." "They're protective," I said. "They've been through a lot. Diana's death hit this whole family hard, and—" "I understand that," she said, firmly. "I respect that completely. But Marcus, I am going to be your stepmother. I need to be allowed to act like it. I need your support in that, because right now, I don't feel like I have it." Those words sat heavy in my chest. But instead of acting on them the way I should have, I told her to be patient. I told her it would get better. I chose the easy road instead of the right one. And Celeste paid for that choice. 3 months after Celeste moved in, Naomi came down with a severe fever and stomach illness. She missed a full week of school and was completely bedridden, weak, unable to eat much, exhausted all the time. Celeste immediately stepped into full caregiver mode. She cleared her schedule, stayed home, monitored Naomi's temperature every 2 hours, made soups from scratch, researched the best rehydration methods, and sat with Naomi reading to her when she was too tired to do anything else. "You don't have to do all this," I told her. "Yes, I do. She's going to be my daughter. This is what you do." Watching her care for Naomi with that kind of dedication made me love her in a deeper, quieter way than I had before. This wasn't performance. This was who she was. But Mama Evelyn and Darlene saw it differently.
Within 48 hours of Naomi getting sick, Mama Evelyn called to say she was coming to stay. I told her it wasn't necessary. She came anyway, with 2 suitcases. 2 days later, Darlene arrived with her own bag, in a determination to help that had nothing to do with helping. What followed over the next 3 weeks was the most carefully organized campaign of subtle exclusion I have ever witnessed in my own home. Mama Evelyn took over the kitchen. I know exactly what Naomi needs when she's sick. I've been nursing this child since she was a baby. Darlene took over Naomi's entertainment and emotional support. Let me handle this, Celeste. You have your own things to deal with. Naomi needs family right now. Every time Celeste tried to contribute, every single time, she was politely but firmly redirected, dismissed, made to feel like an intruder in her own home. I saw it. I knew it was happening, and I said nothing substantial enough to stop it, because Naomi was getting better, and it was easier to tell myself that everything was fine. Celeste looked at me one evening with the kind of look that a person gives when they're starting to realize that the person they love might not fully have their back. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That look haunted me for months afterwards. The explosion happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks into Naomi's illness. Naomi was feeling well enough to sit up, and Celeste suggested taking her outside for a short walk in the back garden. Fresh air, some sunlight. The doctor had actually recommended it. "That's not a good idea," Mama Evelyn said immediately. "The air is cold today. She needs to stay inside." "It's 64 degrees and sunny, Mama Evelyn," Celeste replied, keeping her voice steady. "The doctor specifically said fresh air would help her recovery." "I have been raising children before you were born. I know what's best for my granddaughter. And I know what her doctor said. I am going to be her mother. I need to have a right to make decisions about her care." Darlene stepped in immediately. "You've known this child for less than a year. We have known her since the day she was born. Don't come in here and try to tell us what she needs." "I'm not trying to take your place. I'm trying to be part of this household, and every single time I try, you both find a way to make me feel like an outsider in my own home." "Maybe that's because you are." The silence after those words was brutal. I was standing right there. I watched the color drain from Celeste's face. I watched her look at me, waiting for me to say something, anything. And I said nothing. I stood there like a coward and said nothing. Celeste walked to our room and didn't come out for the rest of the day. That night, I tried to apologize. She said, "Marcus, I don't need you to apologize. I need you to act. There is a difference, and you need to figure out which one you're capable of." I didn't sleep well that night, or many nights after. 6 weeks later, Naomi had been fully healthy for weeks, but Mama Evelyn and Darlene had not gone back to their own homes. They had settled in, created routines, made themselves permanent. Celeste had grown quieter, not cold. She was never cold with me, but quieter, contained, like someone carefully conserving their energy for a battle they weren't sure they could win. I could feel our relationship shift under all that pressure, and I didn't know how to stop it. I decided to plan something big for Celeste's birthday, April 12th. I would take the day off work entirely. I would plan an evening that was completely focused on her, on us, on the future I still absolutely intended to build with her. The plan, a brand new car, a charcoal gray Tesla with her initials on the floor mats parked in our driveway with a large silver bow, first-class tickets to Paris for 10 days. Celeste had mentioned Paris dozens of times, always as a dream rather than an expectation, and a private dinner at the best restaurant in Atlanta. But first, I needed Celeste out of the house so I could set everything up. I told her that morning that I had unavoidable emergency meetings and wouldn't be able to celebrate with her until the evening. The disappointment in her voice on the phone was real, and it hurt me, but I pushed through it, knowing that by 5 o'clock she would understand why. Then I called Darlene. "I need a favor. I need you to get Celeste out of the house this afternoon for about 2 hours. Take her to coffee, shopping, a walk, anything. I'm setting up a birthday surprise for her and I need the place clear." There was a pause. "What kind of surprise?" Darlene asked. "A car, Paris, dinner, and more importantly, I'm going to have a real conversation with her tonight about our future, about making her the priority she should have been all along, about setting some boundaries around our space as a couple." "Marcus, don't you think you should think about this more carefully? You were talking about basically choosing this woman over the people who have stood by you through everything." "Darlene, I'm going to make her my wife. She should have been the priority from the beginning. I need you to support that. Can you do this for me or not?" "Okay, Marcus," she said finally. "I'll get her out of the house." I should have paid attention to how quickly she agreed after all that resistance. I didn't.
At 4:30 that afternoon, I was driving home with my heart running faster than my car. The Tesla was being delivered at 5. The Paris tickets were in my jacket pocket. I had a speech prepared. Everything I had been meaning to say to Celeste for months finally said the right way. I called Darlene 30 minutes out. "Hey, I'm about 30 minutes away. Is Celeste out of the house?" "Everything is set, Marcus," Darlene said. There was something in her voice I didn't analyze at the time. Something too smooth. "She'll be very surprised." "Perfect. Thank you. This is going to be a good night." As I turned into the long driveway of our property, I was already smiling. I was picturing Celeste's face when she saw the car, imagining her reaction when she opened the envelope with the Paris tickets. I rounded the last curve of the driveway, and my smile disappeared. Standing in front of my house were 3 people in white clothing. Mama Evelyn, 79 years old, small and fragile, sitting on the front step, her gray hair soaked and plastered against her head, muddy water dripping down her white blouse. Darlene, standing just behind her, her white shirt clinging to her body, stained brown with dirty water, her face arranged in an expression of pure, practiced shock. And Naomi, my 12-year-old daughter, standing in her white school uniform, a uniform Diana had picked out the pattern for, completely ruined, soaked through, her arms wrapped around herself in the cold. Standing above them, holding an empty plastic bucket, was Celeste, the woman I had planned to surprise with a car and a trip to Paris had just poured dirty water on my mother, my sister, and my daughter. I hit the brakes so hard my tires screamed. I was out of the car before it had fully stopped moving. "What is going on?" My voice came out louder than I intended, loud enough that I could hear it bounce off the house walls. Celeste's head snapped up. The bucket dropped from her hands. Her face, and I registered this even through my fury, showed something that looked like absolute terror. Not guilt, not the defiance of someone who'd done something on purpose and was ready to defend it. Terror. "Marcus, please," she started. "Don't!" I moved past her to Mama Evelyn first. I crouched down in front of my mother and took her hands. They were shaking. "Mama, are you hurt? Do you need a doctor?" "I'm all right," she said in a small voice. I can't believe it, Marcus. I can't believe she would do something like this to us." I stood up. I looked at Naomi. My daughter's eyes were wet and she was trembling. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said quietly. "I'm just cold." Something ignited in my chest that I can only describe as the most primal anger I have ever felt in my life. I turned to Celeste. "Explain this to me." "Marcus, you have to listen to me. This isn't what it—" My mother is sitting in dirty water. My daughter's school uniform is ruined. My sister is soaking wet.
and you are holding the bucket. Tell me what part of this I'm misunderstanding." "It was an accident," Celeste said. Her voice was shaking. "Darlene told me to—" "She's lying," Darlene said, immediately, moving to stand between me and Celeste. Her voice was hard and certain. "She lost her temper. She's been furious about Mama staying here, about me coming around. She snapped. She grabbed that bucket and she threw it at us. We were just standing here." "That is not what happened," Celeste said, and her voice broke on the last word. I looked between them. On one side, the woman I loved, holding an empty bucket, tears running down her face. On the other, my mother, my sister, my daughter, soaked, cold, shaken. The evidence was in front of me. "I trusted you, Celeste," I said to Celeste. My voice had gone quiet by then, which was somehow worse than the shouting. "I brought you into this house, into our family. I was about to give you everything I had, and this is how you treat them?" "Marcus, please, 5 minutes." "I don't need 5 minutes. I can see what happened." "You can see what someone wanted you to see," Celeste said, her voice suddenly steady. "And if you send me away right now without hearing me out, you are going to regret it for the rest of your life. I promise you that. The only thing I regret is not listening to my family when they warned me." Something passed across her face then, something I still think about. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, Marcus, you do what you have to do, but remember this moment. Remember exactly how you felt right now, because someday soon, you are going to find out the truth, and you are going to have to decide what kind of man you want to be after that." I told her to get her things and leave. She went. If this story is gripping you, subscribe to Fusion Renarratives right now. Hit that like button. Drop your country in the comments. We want to know where our family is watching from. Trust me, what comes next will change everything. Celeste left that evening with 2 suitcases and the engagement ring placed carefully on the kitchen table. She didn't slam doors. She didn't make a scene. She walked quietly, which was somehow the most painful thing she could have done. I remember standing in the living room after she was gone, surrounded by my family, and feeling not relief, not righteous, just hollow. Mama Evelyn made tea. Darlene put Naomi to bed. Everyone moved around me carefully, the way people move around someone who'd just been through something traumatic. "You did the right thing," Mama Evelyn said to me. I nodded. I didn't believe her. I did what I always did when pain became unbearable. I worked. I worked 18-hour days. I accepted speaking invitations across the country. I flew to Singapore for a deal that my team could have handled. I flew to London for meetings that could have been calls. I moved fast and far and constantly, because if I slowed down, I would have to sit with what I had done. "Marcus, you need to stop," my business partner Ray said over a video call about 3 weeks after Celeste left. "You look like you aged 5 years. I've seen you make 3 decisions this week that you would normally spend 3 weeks analyzing. Something is wrong." "Business is fine, Ray. I'm not talking about the business." He was right, but I didn't know how to slow down without falling apart, so I kept moving. At home, things had settled into a routine that felt safe and deeply wrong. Mama Evelyn ran the household. Darlene handled Naomi's schedule. Everything was orderly, quiet, controlled. "See how peaceful it is now?" Mama Evelyn said one evening when I came home. "Yes," I said. But peaceful isn't the same as happy, and I kept confusing the two. Something was different about Naomi. She was still bright, still sharp, still funny in that quick, dry way that reminded me of Diana. But there was something underneath all of that, a weight she was carrying that a 12-year-old should not have had to carry. She would start sentences and stop them. She would look at me in the middle of dinner like she was trying to decide whether to say something. Sometimes she would approach me in my office with that specific look on her face, the look that meant she had something important to say, and then change the subject at the last second. I noticed, and I told myself I would make time to talk to her properly, soon, after this call, after this meeting, after I finished this report. I kept delaying. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Naomi said one Saturday morning at the breakfast table. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" "Well, it's about Celeste. I was wondering if maybe—" "Marcus!" Darlene burst through the back door, carrying groceries and filling the kitchen with the kind of noise that ended conversations. "Perfect timing. I have everything for the pancakes Naomi loves. Come help me, baby girl." Naomi looked at me. I looked at her, and in that shared look was everything neither of us said. "We'll talk later," I told her. Later never quite arrived.
I started to notice it properly about 2 months after Celeste left. Every time Naomi tried to have a serious, private conversation with me, something would interrupt it. Every single time. If she caught me alone in my office, Mama Evelyn would knock with tea or a question about groceries. If she sat beside me in the car, Darlene would call with something urgent. If she stayed up late to catch me after everyone had gone to bed, Mama Evelyn would appear in the hallway saying Naomi needed sleep for school. It happened too many times to be coincidental. But every time I looked at the pattern directly, it seemed impossible. These were the women who loved us. These were the women who had stood by our family through the worst years of our lives. Why would they stop my daughter from talking to me? I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but Naomi kept trying and kept getting stopped, and I kept watching the frustration build in her young face until it started looking like something else entirely. Something like despair. 3 months after Celeste left, I ran into my old college friend, Victor, at a business function. Victor had been at the City Health Gala the weekend before, one of those large charity events attended by most of Atlanta's professional class. "I saw your ex at the gala," Victor said, casually, the way men mention things they don't realize are landmines. My chest tightened. "Celeste?" "Yeah, she was there presenting her community pharmacy program. Man, Marcus, the room stopped when she got on that stage. She spoke for 12 minutes and got a standing ovation. I'm not exaggerating. The mayor was sitting in the front row applauding." I was quiet for a moment. How did she seem? Victor considered this. Successful, driven, but sad around the eyes, like someone who's doing great but carrying something heavy. I thanked him and changed the subject, but his words stayed with me all night. The woman my family had described as a manipulative opportunist was out there winning standing ovations for building community health services for people who couldn't afford care. She was succeeding on her own terms, the way she had always said she wanted to. I drove past her pharmacy 2 days later. Through the window, I could see her in the consultation area, talking to an elderly patient with the same focused, patient attention she had always given everyone who needed it. She looked real, she looked honest, she looked exactly like the woman I had fallen in love with. For the first time since I sent her away, I allowed myself to ask the question I had been avoiding. What if I was wrong? It was 4 months after Celeste left when Diana came to me. I know how that sounds, but I want you to understand, Diana didn't come to me in some vague, forgettable dream, the way people sometimes have fuzzy dreams about people they've lost. She came to me the way she used to come into a room, directly, purposefully, completely herself. She was standing at the foot of my bed, wearing the yellow dress she had worn on our first anniversary. She looked healthy, she looked whole, and she looked furious. "Marcus Cole," she said, "wake up." "Diana?" "No, listen to me.
You are failing our daughter. I'm taking care of her. I provide everything she... You're not listening to her. There is a difference, and you need to understand it right now before it gets worse. In the dream, I tried to explain myself. I told her about how busy I had been, about the interruptions, about how Naomi seemed okay. She is not okay. She has been trying to tell you something important for 4 months. Every time she tries, the people around you stop her, and you let them because it's easier than confronting what she needs to tell you. What does she need to tell me? The truth about the day you sent Celeste away, about what really happened with that bucket of water, about who put the dirt in it, about who positioned our family in exactly the right place to get splashed. The dream went cold. Are you saying... I'm saying our daughter saw everything, and she's been carrying that alone for 4 months because the adults around her have been making sure she never gets the chance to tell you. Marcus, I trusted you to listen to her. I trusted you to protect her, even from family, especially family, when family is the problem. Mama Evelyn wouldn't... Go to Naomi, tonight, right now. Lock the door and don't let anything interrupt you this time. And Marcus. She moved closer. I could smell her perfume, the same one she had worn since college. Choose truth over comfort, even when it costs you. That's the kind of man I always believed you were. Don't make me wrong about that. I woke up at 2:17 in the morning with tears on my face and my heart hammering. I got out of bed. I walked down the hall to Naomi's room and knocked softly. No answer. I knocked again, a little louder. Naomi, baby girl, wake up. I need to talk to you. I heard movement, then footsteps. The door opened and Naomi appeared, squinting against the hallway light, her hair loose and her eyes still half asleep. Dad, it's the middle of the night. Are you okay? I need to talk to you. Right now. Can I come in? She stepped back. I came in, sat on the edge of her bed, and waited until she sat across from me. Naomi, I said quietly, I need you to tell me what you've been trying to tell me for the last 4 months, whatever it is, tonight. No interruptions, no waiting, no delays. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were wide and careful and young and somehow very, very old. If I tell you the truth, will you believe me, even if it's different from what Grandma and Aunt Darlene said? Something cold moved through my chest. I will believe you, I said. I promise. She took a breath. Dad, Celeste didn't throw that water at us on purpose. She didn't even know it was dirty. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Tell me everything, I said.
It was the afternoon of Celeste's birthday, Naomi said. Her voice was steady, like she had rehearsed this moment in her head many times. I came home from school early because we had a half day. Nobody knew I was home yet. I was upstairs changing out of my uniform when I heard Aunt Darlene outside in the back garden. She paused. I nodded for her to continue. I looked out my window. I saw Aunt Darlene talking to Celeste near the garden shed. There was a bucket of clean water sitting by the shed, the one we used for washing the garden tools. I could see it was clean. It was clear, no mud or anything. Okay, I said. My voice was very controlled. Then Aunt Darlene said something to Celeste and went around the side of the shed like she was going to get something. But Dad, she didn't go to get anything. I could see around the side from my window. She went to the compost pile and she scooped up a big handful of wet dirt and mud, and she came back to the bucket and she poured it in. She stirred it around with a stick. The silence in the room was total. You put the dirt in the bucket? I said. Yes, Dad. While Celeste wasn't looking. Celeste had her back turned. She was looking the other way. I made myself keep breathing. What happened next?
Aunt Darlene came back to Celeste and said she had to go inside for a moment to check on something. She told Celeste to wait, then she came inside and she found me and Grandma. She told us to put on our white clothes because she wanted to take photos of us in the garden for a birthday surprise for you. She said white would look beautiful with the flowers. Naomi's voice caught slightly on that last sentence. She brought us outside, and she walked us to exactly the spot next to the garden shed. She told us to stand right there while she got the camera from inside, but she didn't get a camera. She went back to Celeste and told her to go ahead and throw the bucket of water on the compost heap. She said it needed clearing. I closed my eyes for 2 seconds. Celeste had no idea we were standing there, Naomi said. She just did what Aunt Darlene told her to do, and when the water hit us, she screamed. Dad, she actually screamed. She dropped the bucket and ran to Grandma and said she was so sorry. She didn't know we were there. It was an accident. And then your grandmother and Darlene started yelling at her? Immediately, like they were ready for it. Aunt Darlene started telling her she did it on purpose, that she'd been looking for a reason to hurt us, that this is who she really was. And Grandma was crying, and Celeste was trying to explain, and then I drove up. Yes. We sat in silence for a long time. Naomi, why didn't you say something right then, when I got out of the car? I tried, Dad. I tried to say something, but everyone was shouting, and you weren't looking at me. And then Aunt Darlene grabbed my arm and pulled me behind her and said to stay quiet. She said if I said anything, it would make things worse. She said it would upset you. And after that day? Naomi's face crumpled slightly. Every time I tried to tell you, every single time something happened to stop it. I thought at first it was just coincidence, but after the 3rd or 4th time, I started realizing they were doing it on purpose. They would listen at the door. They knew when I was about to say something important, and they would always find a reason to interrupt. She looked down at her hands. Grandma told me once that talking about it just make you sad and make things worse. She said you were finally starting to heal, and I shouldn't drag you backward. And I believed her, Dad, for a while. What changed? I stopped sleeping properly. I kept having this same dream where Celeste is standing outside our house in the rain, and nobody will let her in. And I would wake up and I would feel sick about it, because I know the truth and I wasn't saying it, and it felt like I was just as guilty as they were. My daughter, 12 years old, carrying all of that alone for 4 months. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. I'm sorry, baby girl. I am so sorry I didn't make it safe for you to tell me. That was my failure, not yours, never yours. She held on to me and cried in the quiet way children cry when they've been holding something in for too long. We stayed like that for a long time. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat in my home office until the sun came up, staring at nothing, trying to organize what I was feeling into something I could act on. The problem with getting the answer you've been afraid of, it doesn't bring relief. It brings a different kind of pain, the kind that comes from understanding exactly how wrong you were and exactly how much it cost. I had been wrong about Celeste, completely, catastrophically wrong. The woman I loved, the woman I had asked to marry me, invited into our home, and then thrown out in front of my entire family, had been framed, set up, deliberately humiliated by the 2 people I had trusted most to protect us, my mother, my sister. And then I had made it worse by refusing to listen to her, by choosing what I could see over what I should have trusted, by letting 4 months pass while my daughter carried the weight of the truth alone. I put my phone down, not because I didn't want to call her, but because I owed her more than a phone call. I owed her the kind of apology that couldn't be given over the phone. First, though, I had to deal with my family.
I waited until Naomi left for school. Then I asked Mama Evelyn and Darlene to join me in the living room. They came in together, Darlene carrying her coffee, Mama Evelyn moving slowly with her cane. They sat on the sofa across from me.
Something in my face must have warned them, because neither of them spoke first. "I know what you did," I said. The coffee cup stopped midway to Darlene's mouth. "Marcus," Mama Evelyn started, "I know about the bucket. I know about the mud. I know about the white clothes and the positioning and all of it. Naomi saw everything. She's been trying to tell me for 4 months, and I know you've been making sure she couldn't." The silence that followed was the loudest silence I have ever sat inside. Darlene set her coffee down slowly. Her hands were controlled, but her face was not. "She's a child," Darlene said finally. "Children misunderstand." She described exactly what she saw from her window, the clean water, you adding the mud, you positioning Mama and her in the exact splash zone. She described all of it. She doesn't misunderstand anything. Another silence. Mama Evelyn spoke first. Her voice was quiet. "We did it to protect you." "To protect me from what?" "From making the worst mistake of your life." "The worst mistake of my life," I said slowly, "was listening to you two instead of her." Darlene stood up. "Marcus, you don't understand what it was like watching you fall into this. You were vulnerable. You were grieving. She came along at exactly the right moment and said exactly the right things, and you couldn't see it because you wanted so badly to believe. She was earning her own living. She refused every offer of money I made. She built her own business. She treated Naomi like family from the very first week. Tell me, what about any of that looked like manipulation to you?" "She was too good," Darlene said, her voice cracking. "That's exactly the problem. Real people aren't that good. We thought she had to be hiding something." "Or," I said, "you were afraid. Because if she was everything she appeared to be, then there was no reason for her not to be in our lives. And if she was in our lives permanently, then your place in this house, your access to me, your control over Naomi, your financial security, all of it would change." The silence that followed that statement was different. It was the silence of something true that nobody could argue against. Mama Evelyn started crying quietly. Darlene didn't. She just looked at me with an expression that was somewhere between defiance and shame. "You manipulated my daughter. You used her love for me to keep her quiet about what she witnessed. She's 12 years old, and she has been carrying this alone for 4 months because you made her feel responsible for my happiness. I want you both to understand how seriously wrong that is." "Louis," she stopped, tried again. "Marcus, son, we love you. I know you do, and that's what makes this so hard, because I love you both, but love doesn't give anyone the right to do what you did. And right now, I need you both to go back to your own homes." "Marcus, you can't." "I can, and I am. I'm not throwing you out of my house. I'm asking you to leave my house so I can start cleaning up the mess that happened inside it. When you are ready to face what you did, not explain it, not justify it, but face it, we can talk about what comes next, but not before that." It took them 3 hours to pack. Darlene left without speaking to me again. Mama Evelyn paused at the door and said, "I hope you know that everything I did out of love." "I know that, Mama. But someday I need you to understand that the thing you did, even out of love, nearly destroyed my daughter, an innocent woman, and whatever trust I have left in the people closest to me. Love doesn't clean that up automatically." She nodded, and she left. I stood alone in my front doorway and watched the 2 cars disappear down the driveway. And for the first time in 4 months, the house felt like it was mine again. The next morning, I did what I should have done months earlier. I researched Celeste Harmon with the same thoroughness I applied to any significant business decision. What I found made everything worse. In 4 months, Celeste had not just survived, she had thrived.
The Robinson Community Health Center. She had renamed the pharmacy, expanded it, turned it into a full-service community health facility, had been featured in 3 local media outlets and 1 national health publication. She had partnered with 2 hospitals and a nonprofit network to provide free or subsidized care to over 600 patients who had no other access to health care. She had been awarded a Small Business Excellence Prize by the city. She had been invited to speak at a national pharmacy conference. She owned her building outright. She drove a car she had bought herself. She was reported to be in the process of opening a 2nd location. The woman who had supposedly been chasing my wealth had built a small empire of her own, independently, quietly, and in service of people who needed her. I put my phone down and sat with that for a long time. Then, I called a florist.
I arrived at Celeste's health center on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I carried 2 things: a large bouquet of white orchids, her favorite, not roses, and the truth. I had no prepared speech this time. I had learned my lesson about prepared speeches. The health center was already busy. 3 patients in the waiting area, a nurse at the front desk, the smell of clean space and good purpose. Celeste was in the consultation area, speaking with an elderly man about his medication schedule. I could see her through the glass. She was leaning slightly forward, the way she always did when she was giving someone her full attention. The man was nodding. He looked reassured. She looked up and saw me through the window. For a moment, just a moment, everything she felt passed across her face. Surprise, pain, a flash of something that might have been longing, and then the professional mask came back up. She finished with her patient. She walked out of the consultation area. She stopped 3 feet away from me. Marcus, Celeste. We stood there for a moment in the busy waiting room, and I was aware of the nurse at the desk pretending very hard not to watch us. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I asked. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she said, "Come to my office." Her office was small and neat and full of light from a window that faced a small courtyard. There were photos on the desk, one of the health center's grand opening, one of her parents at some celebration, one of Celeste herself at what looked like the pharmacy school graduation. There was no photo of us. Of course there wasn't. I set the orchids on her desk. She looked at them, but didn't pick them up. "I know the truth," I said, "about what happened on your birthday, about the bucket, the mud, the white clothes, all of it." She went very still. "Naomi told me everything," I said. "She saw the whole thing from her bedroom window. She's been trying to tell me for 4 months. Every time she tried, my mother or Darlene found a way to stop her." Celeste closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. 4 months, she said quietly. 4 months, I confirmed, and I should have listened to you the day it happened. I should have given you the 5 minutes you asked for. I should have chosen trust over what I thought I saw. I failed you in every possible way, Celeste. I don't have any excuse for that. I'm not going to try to give you one. I came here to apologize, fully, completely, without qualification, and to ask you, knowing that you have every right to say no, if there is any part of you that might be willing to try again." She didn't speak for a while. "Do you know the worst part was?" she said finally. "Tell me." "It wasn't losing you. I mean, that was devastating. But the worst part was that I knew you were a good man. I knew you had more capacity for fairness and trust than you showed me that day. And I kept wondering for months whether the man I fell in love with was real,
or whether I had imagined him. That hit me somewhere deep. "He's real," I said. "He was just a coward for too long." Celeste stood up from behind her desk and walked to the window. She looked out at the courtyard for a long moment. "Marcus, I've built something good here. I'm proud of what this place is. I'm proud of what I've become in the last 4 months, even though every day of it was harder than it needed to be. I am not the same woman that left your house. I know that. So I need you to understand something. If we do this, if I even consider doing this, it cannot go back to what it was before. The interference, the subtle exclusion, you staying silent when you should have spoken up, none of that is acceptable to me anymore. I need a partner, a real one, not a man who loves me in private and lets other people dismantle that love in public." Agreed. Every word. "And Naomi asked me last night if I thought you would forgive us. She said, and I want you to hear this exactly, she said she kept loving us when it was hard. That makes her the best person I know." Celeste pressed her hand over her mouth. "She's 12, she said, muffled behind her fingers. "She's extraordinary," I said, "like her mother was, and like the woman her stepmother would be." The word stepmother sat in the air between us for a moment. Then Celeste turned from the window and looked me directly. "I never stopped loving you either," she said. "I want you to know that, even though it made the last 4 months significantly harder. I tried very hard not to, but I didn't manage it." I crossed the room to where she was standing. "I'm sorry, Celeste. I am so deeply sorry." She knows, and she let me hold her. That evening, I picked Naomi up from school and told her in the car that I had spoken to Celeste. "Is she okay?" Naomi asked immediately. She was gripping the door handle the way she always did when she was holding herself together. "She's more than okay," I said. "She's incredible. She always has been." "Is she coming back?" "She's coming to dinner on Saturday, if you'd like that." Naomi turned to face the window. I could see in the side mirror that she was crying. "Baby girl." "I'm okay, Dad," she said in a voice that was tight with held-back tears. I'm really glad. I missed her so much." "I know, me too." "Dad, I want to apologize to her for not saying something sooner." "Naomi, you tried. You tried many times. None of that was your failure." "I know, but I still want to say sorry because she matters and she should know that what she went through wasn't fair." My daughter, 12 years old. Diana had raised a remarkable human being, and I was fiercely proud of every single inch of her. When Celeste arrived on Saturday evening, Naomi was waiting at the front door before the car even stopped. She ran down the porch steps and wrapped her arms around Celeste so tight that Celeste stumbled back half a step. "I'm sorry," Naomi said into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry it took so long." "Hey," Celeste said, holding her just as tight. "Hey, sweetheart, none of that was your fault. Not a single bit of it. You were brave. You kept trying to tell the truth even when people kept making it hard. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to be proud of." Naomi pulled back and looked at her with red eyes. "I missed you." "I missed you too, more than you know." The 3 of us had dinner together that evening, just us. No interference, no undercurrents, no walking on eggshells. We talked about Naomi's science competition. We talked about Celeste's health center expansion. We ate too much dessert and laughed about nothing important. And the house felt like home again. Not just functional, not just orderly and quiet and controlled. Home.
We didn't rush back into what we had been. We both knew that the relationship that existed before the birthday had cracks in it that we hadn't fully addressed, cracks that had been exploited because we hadn't been building on solid enough ground. So we built slower this time. We started counseling, individual and joint. The therapist, a quiet woman named Dr. Patel, who had an office full of plants and a gift for asking exactly the wrong, comfortable question at exactly the right time, helped us work through the complicated terrain of grief, trust, family pressure, and what healthy partnership actually looks like when you're a powerful man with complicated family dynamics. You have a pattern, Dr. Patel told me in one of our individual sessions, of prioritizing peace over truth. You avoid confrontation with the people you love because you're afraid that confrontation will cost you the relationship. But what that avoidance actually costs you is something much worse. It costs the people who need you to stand up for them. That one landed. What do I do about it? I asked. You practice doing it differently, deliberately, one uncomfortable choice at a time. Celeste had her own work to do. She was learning to speak up earlier instead of waiting for the situation to become unbearable. She was learning to say what she needed without shrinking from it to avoid creating conflict. She was learning that wanting to be treated with basic dignity in her own home was not asking for too much. Naomi joined a few sessions as well. Dr. Patel told me afterward that Naomi was one of the most emotionally intelligent 12-year-olds she had ever met. She carries other people's feelings very deeply, she said. She'll need people around her who encourage her to put her own feelings first sometimes. We worked on that together. The second proposal. 6 months after I went back to her office with white orchids in the truth, I proposed again. This time, there were no lanterns, no elaborate setups, no restaurants. I did it in our kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, while Naomi was sitting at the kitchen table, supposedly doing homework, but very obviously watching us over the top of her textbook. Celeste was making tea. I came up behind her and I said, "I'd like to ask you something." She turned around. She saw my face. She set the teacup down. I didn't have a speech. I just had truth. You have already been part of this family in every way that matters. You were always going to be part of it, whether anyone else agreed or not. You were part of it the day you told my daughter she had her mother's smile. You were part of it the day you stayed up through the night when she had that fever because you didn't want her to wake up alone. You have earned your place here in ways that have nothing to do with me and everything to do with who you are. I don't want to spend one more day not making that official. I reached into my pocket for the ring. Naomi, from behind her textbook, "Dad, finally!" Celeste burst out laughing through her tears. "Yes," she said, before I even got the ring fully out of the box. "Yes, absolutely yes." Naomi abandoned all pretense of homework and threw herself into both of us. "We're really a family now," she said, holding on to both of us at once. "We already were," Celeste said, kissing the top of her head. "We already were." The wedding. We were married on a Saturday in June in the garden behind our house, the same garden where dirty water was once thrown as a weapon. We chose it on purpose. Celeste said, "I want to walk into that space as a bride. I want to replace what happened there with something better." And so we did. Naomi was our flower girl and our maid of honor, and our ring bearer, and our speech maker, all rolled into one 14-year-old who wore a blue dress and cried happy tears through the entire ceremony. Her speech was short and completely her. My dad taught me that family is about who shows up for you, not just who's related to you. Celeste showed up. She showed up before she was officially family, and she kept showing up even when people made it really hard for her to. She showed up for me, which I just want her to know I never,
ever took for granted. She's the best thing that's happened to this family since I was born. I love you both. Now please kiss so we can eat because I'm starving." The small crowd erupted. I looked at Celeste, who was laughing and crying at the same time, and I thought, Diana, you were right. The heart has unlimited capacity, and I nearly missed all of it because I wasn't brave enough to trust the thing I knew was true. Part 9. What came after? Reconciliation with family. 2 years after the wedding, Mama Evelyn had a minor stroke and was hospitalized for 10 days. I was on a plane within 4 hours of the call. Celeste came with me, without hesitation, without being asked. When we walked into Mama Evelyn's hospital room, my mother looked at us with an expression that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She reached out her hand, the one that wasn't connected to the IV, and said, "Celeste, you came." "Of course I came," Celeste said, and sat beside her bed. Over the next 10 days, Celeste sat with Mama Evelyn every morning. She talked to her doctors. She helped manage her medication questions. She brought food from a restaurant my mother liked. She never once brought up what happened, never once asked for recognition or gratitude. On the 7th day, Mama Evelyn took Celeste's hand and said, "I was wrong about you. I have known that for 2 years, and I haven't had the courage to say it. I am saying it now. I was wrong, and I am sorry, not just for what I did, but for what it cost you." Celeste held her hand and said, "I accept that, Mama Evelyn, truly." I stood in the doorway and didn't say anything. Some moments are not yours to interrupt. Darlene's reckoning came slower. She struggled with pride in a way that Mama Evelyn did not, but she got there eventually. 2 years of watching what real family looks like, what real love looks like, what Celeste brought into our house every day, quietly and without drama. She called me one evening and said, "I'm ready to apologize to Celeste, not through you, to her directly." I said, "I'll let her know." That conversation between Darlene and Celeste happened in private. I don't know exactly what was said. What I know is that Darlene arrived looking like she was walking into a courtroom and left looking like someone who had put down a very heavy bag. And Celeste came home that evening lighter than she had been in a long time. Some healing happens in private. That's okay. What Naomi became. Naomi is 16 now as I tell this story. She is sharp, confident, and genuinely kind in a way that does not apologize for itself. She wants to study biomedical engineering. She volunteers on weekends at Celeste's health center, not because we asked her to, but because she decided she wanted to be around the kind of work that makes a real difference. She has her mother's smile, she has her mother's heart, and she has somewhere in there the very best parts of what Celeste brought into our lives. The belief that showing up consistently, honestly, and without drama is worth more than any grand gesture. She told me recently, "Dad, I think about that whole time a lot, the part where I couldn't get you to listen, and I don't think about it with anger anymore. I think about it as the thing that made me understand why it matters so much to make sure people around you feel safe to tell you hard things." She was 16 when she said that. Diana, wherever you are, you did good. We both did. Celeste Cole, and she chose to take my name, which she was under no pressure to do, and which meant more to me than I had words for, now runs a network of 3 community health centers across Atlanta. She employs 47 people. She serves over 4,000 patients annually. She has turned down multiple acquisition offers from national healthcare chains because her centers will never be run by people whose first priority is profit over patients. She still works the consultation desk herself 3 mornings a week. She says it keeps her grounded. She is the most complete person I have ever known, and she is mine, and I am hers, and we built something real, not in spite of everything that tried to destroy it, but in some ways because of it.
I want to tell you what I learned from all of this,
because I think it might be useful to you. I learned that the people who love you the most can also be the people capable of hurting you the deepest, not out of evil, but out of fear. Fear of losing you, fear of becoming less important, fear of change. That fear, when it isn't addressed, can make good people do very bad things. And the tragedy is that they usually do those bad things believing they are protecting you. I learned that staying silent when someone you love is being wronged is not the same as keeping the peace. Silence is a choice, and the cost of that choice isn't paid by the person staying silent, it's paid by the person being wronged. I learned that children see more clearly than we give them credit for, precisely because they haven't yet learned to protect themselves from uncomfortable truth. When your child tries to tell you something, really tell you something, with that specific urgency in their eyes, stop everything. Turn off your phone, close the laptop, make the space. What they are trying to say matters more than whatever is pulling your attention away. And I learned that trust is not a feeling, it is a practice. You build it by choosing the harder thing over and over until the person next to you knows without question that you will not let them face the hard things alone. I almost missed all of that. I almost chose the comfortable lie over the painful truth, and I would have spent the rest of my life in a house that looked orderly and felt completely empty. I'm grateful every single day that my daughter kept trying to tell me, and that Celeste, the most patient and honest woman I have ever met, kept a small door open, even when she had every reason to close it forever. Sit right there. You just went on that whole journey with me, and now I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it before you answer. If you had been standing in that driveway, watching the people you love soaking wet, watching the woman you love holding an empty bucket, what would you have done? Would you have taken 5 minutes to hear her side? Or would you have trusted the picture in front of you? And if you had been Celeste, set up, humiliated, thrown out without a hearing, would you have kept a door open? Would you have gone back when the truth came out? Would you have had the strength to rebuild what someone else's fear had torn down? I want to know. Comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me what you think about the choices made in this story. Mine, Celeste's, Naomi's, Darlene's, Mama Evelyn's. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story moved you, if it hit you somewhere real, then do me one favor before you go. Subscribe to Fusion Narratives, hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We have over 80 stories on this channel, and every single one will teach you something real about love, family, and what it means to choose people who deserve your trust. Thank you for riding through all of this with me. Remember, always listen to your children, always fight for the people who fight for you, and never, ever let anyone else's fear steal the happiness that belongs to you. Part 2 is already on this channel. Go find it. I'll see you there.